Have you ever wondered about the strangest photos that time has forgotten? Today we will reveal to you the strangest and most fascinating vintage photos that you will love. I promise you, they are truly rare and interesting. Enjoy the show. Man, this is killer. Remember that classic meme, all proper in the dining room, raising hell in the kitchen? This cosplay nails it, rocking that 80s server swag, bowdy, pressed shirt, the whole 9 yards. Even got that fancy wood paneling like the steakhouses we hit up back in the day. The mirror shot, pure genius. Brings back memories of my restaurant days. What happened in that kitchen stays in that kitchen, am I right? Look at this West German marvel from '57, the Kuba Comet. Back when we were busy watching Gunsmoke on our trusty American sets, those Europeans were designing this rotating monster. Pretty wild, right? While we paid $300 for our Zenith, these things cost a whopping $2,400. Real Buck Rogers stuff. Makes me think of those old department store displays at Macy's you'd walk by with your family on weekends, pressing your nose against the glass. Man, the space race really had everyone thinking futuristic, even with their TE cabinets. This shot takes me right back to '53. Marilyn in those cat eye specs. Not the bombshell look we're used to, but boy, does it hit different. Every guy in my high school tried to date a girl with glasses just like these after this photo at the magazines. Remember those specs? Your sister probably had a pair. Cost about $4 at Woolworths. This was before How to Marry a Millionaire came out, where she played that gorgeous girl who couldn't see past her nose without glasses. Funny how a single photo can bring back a whole decade, isn't it? This 1919 photograph captures a profound moment in American history. Helen Keller, who overcame incredible odds, meeting Charlie Chaplin on set. She placed her fingers on his lips to understand him. A woman who taught us all about human determination. Growing up, every American kid learned about Helen's story in school. She showed us that disability didn't mean inability. And there's Chaplin, the greatest silent film star of our time, showing such genuine respect. A truly remarkable American moment. Something special about this '53 shot. Marilyn Monroe just being herself with Joe DiMaggio. No Hollywood glamour, just a girl in checkered pants having a real laugh with the Yankee star. Feels like a glimpse into their private world before all the headlines. This rare photo from 1917 shows Joseph Stalin as a young revolutionary years before he became the Soviet dictator. Looking at those penetrating eyes and that notorious mustache, it's chilling to think this was the face of a man who would become one of our greatest adversaries during the Cold War. Back then, none of us could have imagined how this Georgian revolutionary would shape the next half-century of American history. Rita Hayworth, 1942. Caught in her kitchen, wearing pedal pushers and sandals, such a different side from her glamorous roles, just cooking dinner like any other American gal back then. Hard to believe this is the same woman who lit up the silver screen. Birmingham, 1960s. Check out those British cars, Morris Minors and old Royal Mail vans stuck in traffic, and those double-deckers. Different world from our American streets back then. We had our Chevys and Fords, they had these compact Europeans. Funny how traffic jams look the same everywhere though. Wonder Woman herself, Lynda Carter in a stunning portrait from the '70s. Every kid rushing home after school to catch her show, while his dads suddenly found reasons to watch TV with them. Futuro House making its way through Yorkshire, 1971. These weird UFO-looking homes were all the rage back then. Plastic, portable, and supposedly the future of housing. Only about 100 were ever made. Talk about space-age dreams that didn't quite pan out. Lincoln Memorial under construction, 1921. Just look at the scale of it. Those workers up there look tiny next to Lincoln's marble form. This was American craftsmanship at its finest. Each piece of that statue had to be lifted and placed just right. 3 years later, it would become one of our nation's most sacred monuments. 1984, Princess Diana cracking up at Rowan Atkinson backstage at the Royal Variety Show, way before he was Mr. Bean, but you can bet he was already making faces. Diana had that gift, could make any formal event feel natural. Just watch her genuine laugh here. Audrey Hepburn at the party scene from Breakfast at Tiffany's, 61. That silver gray dress became as famous as the little black one. Something about her, she could make standing in a crowded room look like art. The kind of scene that made every American girl dream of New York City life. Real cowboys from Calgary, 1883. Not those Hollywood types we saw in movies later. These were the genuine article. Look at those worn boots and practical gear. No fancy silver buckles or pressed shirts here. These fellas worked the Canadian cattle trails when the West was still wild. Their faces tell the whole story. Hard work, long days, brutal winters. Always fascinating to see actual photos from when cowboys weren't just characters in Western films, but working men making a living on the frontier. 1946, JFK, fresh-faced and full of that Kennedy charm, just starting his political journey. Only 29 here, running for Congress in Massachusetts. That's Joe Sr. with him, the mastermind behind the Kennedy political dynasty. Looking at this photo now, you can see why folks were drawn to Jack, that natural confidence, that million-dollar smile. Hard to believe in just 14 years he'd be headed to the White House, changing American politics forever. Those were different times in America, when being young and Catholic made headlines. Behind the scenes from '83, Carrie Fisher in that iconic gold costume with Darth Vader during the Rolling Stone shoot. A fun side of Star Wars we didn't get to see in theaters. This was right when Return of the Jedi hit screens and took over every theater in America. One of those photos that showed you how much fun they had making movie history. Winchester, Virginia, 1940. Texaco station with gas at 18 cents a gallon. Yeah, you heard that right, 18 cents. Fill up your tank for about $1, grab some of that Shenandoah Valley apple candy, and you're good to go. Look at those pristine pumps, the hand-painted signs. This was back when service stations were actually service stations. They check your oil, clean your windshield, and you know the owner by name. Hard to believe what we pay at the pump these days makes this photo almost hurt to look at. Stockholm Olympics, 1912. These British ladies just made history in their wool swimsuits. First women's relay team to win Olympic gold. Can't imagine swimming competitively in those outfits today. And check out that chaperone in the middle. Back then, female athletes couldn't even compete without one present. Times sure have changed in Olympic swimming since these pioneers took the plunge. Robert Peary suited up in 1909, heading for the North Pole. That fursuit, all seal and polar bear hide, was the best tech gear of its day. No Gore-Tex or fancy synthetics back then. Just raw survival equipment for temperatures hitting 60 below. Crazy to think he claimed the pole with basically the same gear Eskimos have been using for centuries. Modern explorers wouldn't last a day in what these guys wore. Here's Johnny Cash in '71, sitting cross-legged in the bushes, getting friendly with what looks like a strawberry shortcake. Just a casual day, wearing a striped shirt with a bandana covered in whipped cream. This shot captures that playful side of Cash we didn't always get to see on stage. The kind of moment that reminds you even music legends knew how to goof around. Here's Stevie at the piano during the Room War sessions, '76. Fleetwood Mac was going through all that personal drama, but just look at her, totally focused on the music. That album went on to define the decade. Just imagine being in that studio while they were creating those tracks that would end up playing in every American car radio. Loretta Young on the beach, 1930s. Hollywood glamour at its finest. Even working out looked elegant back then. She could turn a simple exercise shot into something that belonged in Vogue. They just don't make movie stars like this anymore. That classic profile, perfect lighting. This is what we mean when we talk about old Hollywood magic. A woman in an ornate black lace outfit seated on a velvet bench, looking directly at the camera with an intense stare. Note, this image has been digitally enhanced using AI upscaling technology. Behind the scenes of La Dolce Vita, Anita Ekberg lighting up Mastroianni's cigarette, 1954. Pure Italian cinema style right here. Tweed suit meets leather jacket. These two defined European cool for a whole generation of Americans who'd never even been to Rome. Las Vegas, 1931, back when Nevada was still wild territory. That's a Cashman's Garage service car. One of the first businesses in Vegas, way before the neon lights took over. Look at her outfit. Not exactly what you'd expect in Sin City today. Just desert, mountains, and one tough lady making her way in the American West. RFK stopping for a meal at a drive-in in Bluefield, West Virginia during the campaign for his brother JFK to become the 1960 Democratic presidential nominee. A Titanic survivor signing an autograph just days after the disaster in 1912. This wasn't some celebrity photo op. This was real history being captured on our streets. Look at those boys in the back, probably not even realizing they're witnessing something that would be talked about for the next century. Strange to think about how Titanic survivors became instant celebrities in our country. An artist capturing the Twin Towers from Liberty State Park, 1980s. Man, looking at this hits different now. That iconic skyline, those massive towers standing proud over the harbor, part of our everyday life back then. No one painting that scene could have imagined. Well, this photo's now a piece of history itself. Miss Europe contestants, 1930. These dresses tell the whole story. Art Deco patterns, gingham checks, those sleek silhouettes. No Instagram filters or professional stylists back then, just pure 30s glamour. Each outfit probably cost a month's wages, but boy did they know how to make a statement. A vintage style photo showing two ladies in Victorian era dress having tea. The elaborate gowns, feathered hats, and ornate chokers are perfectly staged. Though this image has been enhanced using AI technology to achieve its crisp, detailed look. 1984, Queen dressed up for their I Want to Break Free video. Talk about pushing boundaries. Here's Freddie and the boys in full drag, spoofing a British soap opera. Network suits here in America just didn't get the joke, banned the video. But man, did this become iconic in rock history. Those bunny slippers and curlers tell you everything you need to know about Queen's sense of humor. The Eiffel Tower halfway done, 1888. When you see shots like this, you realize what a crazy dream this was. 7,300 tons of iron reaching into the sky. French engineers doing what everyone said couldn't be done. Just look at those workers up there, like ants on that steel skeleton. Built without computers, without modern cranes, just pure engineering guts. The Titanic's gym, 1912, one of the first ever cruise ship gyms. Top-of-the-line equipment for first-class passengers. That rowing machine wasn't just for show, cost about $4,000 in today's money. The instructor there in white was T.W. Macaulay. He went down with the ship like most of the crew. Strange seeing this peaceful moment, knowing what was coming just days later. Josephine Baker, France, 1920. Halloween, circa 1920s. Those masks would give anyone nightmares. Nothing store-bought back then. Folks made their own costumes, and man, did they get creative. Look at those pointed hats and those eerily grinning faces. Makes today's plastic masks from Walmart look pretty tame. Kind of glad these homemade horrors aren't showing up at my door on Halloween night. Young Winston Churchill in his cavalry officer uniform, 1895. Hard to believe this dapper 20-year-old would become the bulldog who helped save Europe. Just a young lieutenant in the 4th Queen's own hussars here, probably more interested in polo than politics. That ornate uniform with all its braiding cost about a year's pay back then. Talk about starting at the top. Elizabeth Montgomery in a holiday pin-up shot, 1964. Before she was Samantha and Bewitched, she did this Christmas-themed photo. Ava Gardner and Mickey Rooney, early 40s. Nobody could believe this match. Hollywood's newest bombshell with America's favorite boyish star. She was just a small-town girl from North Carolina when they met. Look at that dress with those bold patterns. Pure 40s glamour. Their marriage didn't last, but this shot captures that golden age moment perfectly. 1911, Dr. Elizabeth Brine with her horse-drawn ambulance. Talk about breaking barriers. A woman doctor when most medical schools wouldn't even admit females. That lantern on the side was their version of emergency lights. No sirens, no radio dispatch, just a strong woman with a medical bag and a horse ready to save lives. Bet she had to prove herself twice as hard as any male doctor back then. Lennon and Yoko in Cannes, 71. Just goofing around on the French Riviera. John in his cowboy getup and sneakers looking more like a kid than a rock legend. This was right after the Beatles split, when he was finally free to just be himself. You can see why the press called them strange, but man, they sure knew how to have fun. Schwarzenegger at ballet practice, 1976. Mr. Universe working on his grace, who'd have thought? But smart athletes knew ballet was serious business for body control and flexibility. Arnold was always ahead of the curve. While other bodybuilders just lifted weights, he was in here learning to move like a dancer. Takes a pretty secure guy to put on those tights when you're Mr. Olympia. Behind the scenes on Temple of Doom, 84. Harrison Ford looking every bit indie even off camera. Who knew this kid Ke Huy Quan would come back 40 years later and win an Oscar? Showed you what Hollywood magic really looks like in the making. Just 3 actors on a rock somewhere, creating what would become box office gold. Montana, 1906. Crow Indian tippas with their stories painted right on the canvas. Those aren't just decorations. Each of those horse and warrior figures tells a family's history. This was their way of recording achievements, battles, and hunts. That typee was like a family album, mobile art gallery, and home all in one. You won't find craftsmanship like this anymore. Christmas season, 1968. A couple watching Apollo 8 head to the moon. First humans to ever leave Earth's orbit. There's something powerful about this shot. Just regular folks watching us reach for the stars. 1982 arcade scene. Asteroids, Zaxxon. Those tube socks and short shorts. Quarter after quarter of allowance money going into these machines. Back when gaming was social, had to leave the house to play the good stuff. That Power Deck game they're playing probably cost the arcade owner $2,000. Now kids have better graphics on their phones, but man, nothing beat the feeling of that arcade crowd. George Lucas with his miniature fleet, 1984. This is how movie magic happened before computers took over. Every ship handcrafted, painted, and detailed. That Death Star backdrop, R2-D2, all those AT-ATs and X-Wings, each one a real model you could hold. Took a warehouse of artists and craftsmen to build this galaxy. Today it's all done with a keyboard and mouse, but there was something special about these practical effects. A rare glimpse of real samurai at around 1870. This was the twilight of their era. Japan was modernizing, and these warriors knew their time was ending. Those aren't movie props they're wearing. Those are real katanas passed down through generations. Within a few years of this photo, the samurai class would be disbanded,